Welcome to another maintenance blog, this time coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. So ever since Spain, I've had a battle with our built-in fridge freezer.
There's always a drama when you wake up on a Sunday morning, and we woke up to find that the freezer was defrosting. So Woody is going to check to see what the problem is. So he's checking the positive and the negative.
There's power going to it.
He's taking the fuse out, the continuity test, and there's nothing going on. So it must be the fuse. Let's have a look at the fuse. Yeah, you can just see where it's split.
I've gone through 3 fuses now. It's either the controller or the compressor. I mean, I've been in touch with the suppliers, and what they say is they can basically test the controller, and if it's not the controller, it's the compressor. And what I'm going to do is disconnect it all, get it out. When the freezer's out, we can actually get access to the water tanks, so we can clean them as well. So we can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now the freezer is a complete nightmare to remove. You've got to remove screws, and initially I even had to cut away the fiberglass. But you have to remove it to get to the 3rd part of the water tank to clean it out. Now owls are quite unusual. They've got the water tanks actually housed in the keel here, and it's in 3 parts, but unluckily each part has got its own separate access hatch. All of the water is stored in this 3-part tank, and the keel bolts actually fit in through the bottom of the tank. So once the fridge freezer was removed, I could then access the compressor. So I need to disconnect the compressor here from the box, and then I'll test these. Once I've got this out, I can send the whole box back to the supplier to get it tested. There's a little metal bracket that holds on this plastic cap. Okay, so there's 4 pins, so that's how it connects like that. We'll check the continuity between these as well. So after a bit of research, I found out we've got the old controller, the BD 2.5 or the BD 3.0, and the way to test it is you've got the 4 pins down here, and you're supposed to scratch a bit of paint off the compressor and check for continuity between the pins and the body of the compressor. If there is any continuity, if you get that beep from your multimeter, there is a short, but I've got nothing on the pins. So we might be okay with the motor. It might be the control box, but to test that we've got to send the control box back. But if it is a control box, I think it's a lot cheaper to replace that than replace this. It's a specialist job because you've got to repressurize the whole system, but you can send these back and get it looked at, but I have no idea how much that's going to cost. But at least it might mean that we don't have to replace the whole unit. The other thing is, between the pins there should be no more than 5 ohms resistance, so I've just tested them all and they're all just under 5 or lower, which means that the compressor is probably fine. And it's probably the control box. So I sent the controller back to Penguin in the United Kingdom to get diagnosed, and it turned out it was faulty, and so they had to send a replacement. We got a new control box back from the UK, and so I'm just installing it now. I also ordered a new 24-volt fan because this one was quite intermittent, and I'm just wondering whether the overheating took its toll on the controller. So I'm just going to replace the fan as well as the controller down here. It's just a matter of reconnecting the wires up really, although I have noticed that there isn't any holes to attach the fan to the side yet, and it looks like there's been some new holes drilled in the old fan, so I'm just going to have to replicate them and put it back in place. So I re-crimped on some new terminals, put everything back, and everything was fine. This seems to be working. No way! That was until we reached Panama. It's all now. We've replaced the controller once when it burnt out, and we've continued to have a few problems where the terminals have burnt out, but I think that's just a loose connection, which I think I've now solved. But now we have a problem with the 2-way switch, which switches from fridge settings to freezer settings, and the fridge one has seized and then snapped off, and it doesn't work at all now. We're now stuck in freezer mode, which is no terrible thing because the outsides are kind of cold and the inside's frozen, so we can actually spread things out. But actually what we want to do is to be able to control that properly. The controller, for some reason, is available in Europe but not anywhere else. Importing anything into Panama constitutes a real problem, as we found out with a few other things, and we've been charged an astronomical amount by certain marinas in Panama just to clear customs. But what I've done is ordered a separate fridge controller and separate freezer controller from the United States and had them shipped in via a freight forwarding company. What I'm going to do is take the mechanisms out of both and then put them in the housing of the dual control and then try and find a switch that works. So there's the old controller, and that switch just looks like a standard switch. I'm going to replace it with the freezer controller just because you have some stuff still frozen in there. So hopefully this will be a straight swap out. So that was okay as we crossed the Pacific, and then I hit more problems in Australia. I've spent about £600, so about $800 US, and the compressor has now gone. I could buy a new compressor, but then you know the rest of the unit, it's old, it's 25 years old, and I'm just not convinced it's actually going to fix the problem anymore. As we're in Australia, it is the land of the outback and the great outdoors. They have some fantastic RV 24 volt standalone fridge freezers which you can throw on the back of a ute or take with you on your RV. They're really robust, and they run on 12 volt or 24 volt. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to take the entire unit out, everything, and just make a compartment in which I can drop a standalone fridge freezer in. This has many advantages. It means that if I need to kind of have anything fixed on it, I can just take it out. If we have a drop-in fridge freezer, I can just take it out and get straight to the water tank without pulling wires apart and rewiring and unwiring and basically having the boat in complete upheaval. So we'll remove all the screws, retain the plywood shell, and build a unit inside that. The woodworking and the varnish is really good on the animals, so I don't have to replace that. I know it's got lots of insulation stuck onto it and it's got various other things, so it's not going to be a tidy job, I know that. The freezer itself is about 80 litres, but sort of a quick calculation around here shows that there's about 320 litres. It was a bit of a struggle to get it out, but it is possible. So once the freezer was removed, then the problem became clear. I don't know if you can see down there, but that's where the refrigerant has been leaking out underneath the compressor, which I didn't see when the compressor was in place, but that's definitely the problem. The compressor's been compromised and it's leaking, and it'll cost quite a lot to seal it and then regas it. Another good reason to replace the entire thing. I don't really need to put an 80 litre fridge freezer in there, and I think we'd struggle to find one because the gap to fit it in is only about 450mm width, and there's very few on the market that are that sort of width. Even if I put a 45-50 litre freezer in there, it'll be more than the freezer space in the original. Plus you'd have space for another freezer box as well, or a cool box if you needed it. So the next thing was to strip anything useful off the unit. So I'm almost there, but there's one stubborn corner. There was a hidden bit of ply which was nailed on, and then the plastic moulding of the freezer was glued over the top, so I couldn't actually see that nail until it started to come a little bit apart, and then I could see it. So I've had to use a chisel to kind of just shear it through. So there's about 3 or 4 of those, but now I think what I'm going to have to do is cut away some of the insulation, because the frame's resting on top of the insulation. It won't come loose. And the next thing was to get it off the boat to a recycling centre.
Okay, so we've just come to the recycling centre to get rid of the fridge freezer.
The only problem was, now I'd removed the compressor, it was no longer a fridge, it was just a fiberglass box which we had to pay to get landfilled. So glad to get rid of that fridge freezer, it was the bane of my life. And now I've got a nice blank canvas to work in. So I've got a 24 volt socket there, like a car socket, which I'm going to mount using the wires, the original wires over there. Luckily the wiring system for this fridge is on the upper side there, because it'll be opening from this side. So it's just a short cable run to the socket, which means it's just a plug and play. So I've got 2 bolts sticking up from the plate to the water tank, and they stick up about 75 mil. So I've got to put some sort of mounting battens across here to mount the fridge on. But I've also got to make sure that I've got somewhere to secure it down as well. So a few things to think about. So we opted for a 46 litre Dometic fridge freezer, which fitted perfectly. We could have opted for a much bigger one, but that would mean rearranging the seating area because the lid opens sideways and not lengthways. And I just wasn't willing to put that much effort into it at this moment. So I've got some 45 by 70 treated pine and some hangers to set the base of the fridge. And what I want to do is I want to put some sort of matting on there, just to give it a little bit of a soft cushion. So it wouldn't be the first time that Renka's yoga mats come in handy for this sort of thing. So as always, I had a few jobs on the go at the same time. So luckily the kids could get off the boat and do their schoolwork in the library. So next I did the battens to strap the freezer to. So next I had to install the 24 volt socket, which needed a little mount to raise it off the framework. That's just to protect the cable. Trim these back, get some clean wire. And then remove the last of the old housing, which meant cutting away those awful fiberglass tabs. So I'm just making some brackets out of a few bits of off-cut ply that I found in the bottom of the locker. So what I'm going to do is make a kind of bridging bracket to rest the centre part of the support on. So basically I'm going to hinge one seat about 900mm in, and then I'm going to put a support, and then there's going to be another removable seat after that, just so we can get into the storage below. I've done a dry fit just with a couple of screws just to see what fits and where, and just rejig the design a little bit. I've got the electrics put in place now, which is good, which means I can start building the woodwork around it. I went over to Bunnings and got a couple of sheets of 9mm ply, and I've also got lots of little offcuts from previous jobs as well. So it's really handy actually being anchored so close to a DIY shop. You know, having crossed the Pacific with not one DIY shop, it's a bit of a luxury. And there's hot showers on the other side of the river as well, so it's like a yachting utopia. So I need to make a reinforcement bar in the middle to support the two joins of the lids, and so I'm just making these brackets, and what I'm going to do is I've clamped 2 bits of ply together to make an 18mm bridge to go across, and it's going to rest on these on either side. So just to make life interesting, I don't have a circular saw, I've only got a jigsaw, which doesn't exactly cut in a perfectly straight line, coupled with the fact we've got ferries going past all the time and haven't got any flat surfaces on the boat. I'm using the kind of the concave back of the oppie. It's a miracle I'm getting any straight lines at all. So I broke one of the clamps yesterday, which meant I had to use the clamps off the phone mount, which I usually film with. So even though I did a lot of cutting and a lot of varnishing yesterday, I didn't actually get any footage because the clamps were being used to hold things together. So before the final fit, I thought I'd check the water tanks, which is a good job I did because they were absolutely filthy and well past their scheduled cleaning date. And now a quick plug for a little initiative we're trying.
Have you ever dreamt of a lifestyle like this? Well, here's some really exciting news for you. You can have access to comprehensive guidance crafted by us, Irenka and Woody, seasoned world cruisers, yachting instructors and parents. We've taught thousands of people how to sail, and as a cruising family, we've sailed tens of thousands of miles across the world's oceans.
Now you can access that knowledge from our Patreon platform. So, if you want to shift your life from traditional school and work towards boat schooling, remote working, minimalist living, and a remarkable life experience, then find out how by visiting www.mothership.adrift.com or click on the links in the description below. See you out there.
So do check out our Patreon platform. We're uploading loads of useful resources up there on a weekly basis for anyone who's trying to escape the rat race. Then it was just a matter of putting it all back together. And strapping it down. So I'm hoping the rest of the journey will be maintenance free with plenty of cold beers and frozen meat. So this week's beers are courtesy of Steve, Ben and Craig. So if you'd like to contribute a beer to the cooler, just hit the super thanks button below and it'd be very much appreciated. So if you're an expert or an old salty sea dog with some insights into this matter, then I would love to hear those in the comments below. That's it, thanks for watching, and be sure to check out our other sailing and travel channel, Mothership Adrift. Thanks in particular to our patrons who make all things possible. If you want to become a patron, just follow the links in the description below. You can also check out our merch store with mugs and t-shirts with our Mothership branding.